Hello, 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 hello. Claire Ackers here, coming to you live from Sunnybank Mills in Farsley. How the devil are you? It's Thursday morning, and I cannot wait to share this story with you this morning. If you are joining me live, please do say hello to me in the comments. And if you are catching up a little bit later, please say hello with hashtag replay. So today's conversation is bailing is not failing. And I am going to tell you the real story of what happened in the bothy. So my first experience of wild camping. Um, Spoiler alert, we did not make it through the night. But what actually happened in the experience of going wild camping in a bothy is absolute gold. You know, I have gleaned some real pearls of wisdom from going through that experience that are directly relatable to my business. And you better believe I have been telling all my clients these stories this week. So grab a cuppa and tune in because this is quite the tale and I cannot wait to share it with you. Okay, so what is a bothy? Well, if you are not familiar with what a bothy is kind of a shelter somewhere really, really remote where adventurers can spend the night and be sheltered. And they're pretty basic. I think there's about 3 in England. There's quite a few in Scotland, quite a few in Wales as well, I believe. But there's one in the Lake District, which is where we were heading for, me and my friend Jane. Why were we sleeping in a bothy? Well, literally, and last week's conversation was on this, if you want to go back and watch or listen to the replay of that. But I'm petrified of wild camping and I don't like sharing rooms with people. And so Jane invited me along on this bothy adventure. And I thought, you know what? I've got to put my money where my mouth is in terms of getting out my comfort zone. Let's try it. Let's try this wild camping thing and see if I can just get comfortable with being uncomfortable. So that was the idea. So we made this plan. So on Saturday morning, we rocked up at a remote village in the Lake District, parked up the car, got our packs on. Mine was 15 kilograms, which is more than my 5-year-old. So that was hard in itself, trying to drag those up a mountain. But as we set off, we saw 2 quad bikes with gameskeepers coming down on them and full camouflage fatigues. And one of them had 2 massive dead deer on the back. And the other quad bike had boxes and boxes of guns and ammo. So we're kind of looking at each other thinking, oh my gosh, what are we walking into? This is like the setup for a horror film, right? So we carried on up the track, had a lovely chat, looked at the waterfall, picked out some dipping spaces for the day after, and then we found the signpost to set off over the marshland. And that's where it got quite interesting because we had to climb over streams. We had to walk through pretty much 2K of bog. The rain started and we started to think, oh my gosh, is this a good idea? But it was beautiful and we were looking up at the hills and there were deer everywhere. It was really, really beautiful. And then we came over the crest of the hill and we saw the bothy and it was beautiful. This white stone building surrounded by pine trees. It looked really homely and welcoming. So we got closer and we got inside and you've seen Train Spotting, right? It was that kind of vibe. So it's a series of empty rooms. I'll post a picture of this with an open fire in one room and 3 other rooms with sleeping platforms in, which you'd think it's basic, but it's all you need, right? But it was really, really damp and it was really, really cold and the walls were all grey and peeling and it looked like a crack den, essentially. So anyway, we dumped our stuff and we went out to have a little swim in a waterfall and it was all beautiful. And then we came back and tried to get cozy and warm. We had these adventure foods. Have you seen them? The rehydrated food where you basically boil the water, and rehydrate your meal, and there you go. So I had a chili, and that was quite exciting, boiling the jet boil to make that food. Jane managed to set her stove on fire, so we had a bit of a fireball situation, but luckily we had a backup. It's all good. But it was so cold. And when the sun went down and it was dark, it was gloomy and it was oppressive and it was pitch black. So we ended up going to bed at 7 o'clock just to keep warm. So we're in our sleeping bags trying to keep warm. I was trying to read, but I had to stop reading because my hand was too cold to hold the book. And Jane was facing the other way, and all I could see was her sleeping bag and her back, but then plumes of white smoke coming up over her head because of her breath was so cold. She looked like a dragon, basically. And the whole thing with the bothy is that you can't lock the door. You know, it's meant to be a shelter, it's meant to be a refuge from lonely travellers. And so anybody could walk in at any time. And my bed, where I was sleeping, was right opposite a bare window. And so I was hyper alert, just kind of looking for torches or lights or listening out for sounds. It was really quite scary. It was really quite scary. I was very, on high alert, basically. So it got to about 8 o'clock, and I said, Jane, are you warm enough? Because even though I was in like my Aunt's 4 season sleeping bag, I was still absolutely frozen. So we got up and we put every single item of clothing we could on. You know, think what's his chops? Joey Triviani. Could I be wearing any more clothes? Yeah, and we still couldn't get warm. And then about an hour later, I said, Jane, I'm not having a nice time. And she said, I'm not having a nice time either. And so we realised we had a very small window to bail, essentially. So we decided to leave. Jane's parents lived just outside Kendal, about 45 minutes away. They'd already said, look, we know you're capable, but if you need to, there is a bed ready for you. So we knew we had a bailout plan. But it's when we decided to leave that the adventure really began. I don't think I have ever experienced dark like it. You're nestled in the middle of the hills. There is nothing around you. You assume, although the imagination starts to go wild. And we had basic means of navigation, but we were essentially relying on our wits to get us down off the mountain. So we packed super quickly. You know, never seen anybody stuff everything in a rucksack so back, get a lot kit on and step outside. And there was a storm raging. We've got our head torches on, but the visibility was pretty bad because the rain's kind of driving into your face. And to be honest, I was too scared to look outside the small circle of light that my torch was giving off in case I saw eyes or anything else that I didn't want to see. And the rain was so heavy, the path that we had followed on the way down had disappeared. So it was actually a pretty brave step, just stepping out of that shelter and saying, yes, we are getting down off this mountain. Luckily, on the way up, I had been counting the kilometre markers and what we'd seen about us when we passed that marker. So we had some sort of guide to get us down. I won't bore you with the details of trying to get back. It was definitely adventure, and we definitely got our night navigation badges. If you follow me on Strava, have a little look on there. But I am really proud that the way up and the way down were pretty much identical in terms of the route we took. And B, we actually got down quicker than we got up, which says a lot about the adrenaline that we had pumping, right? I think the most exciting bit was trying to cross the bog again. I heard this shout behind me, and Jane had fallen in to the bog and it was sucking her down. And because of the weight of the pack on her back, she was struggling to get back out. Think Atreyu in The Never-Ending Story. And so she was sinking and sinking, was kind of up to her hips in this bog. So I had to kind of yank her out, and she had a pull to try and yank her out, but it was really quite scary, and bless her, she was absolutely saturated on the way back down. And we had a bit of a walk round on the moor, and we lost our bearings and we couldn't get down. We ended up just following a stream down. We had to ford a river, and in the end, we found the main path. And from there, it was a few K march back to the car. And you can bet I have never been so pleased to see a car in my life. So we got in the car, we drove to Jane's parents. They had a little laugh at us, a very loving laugh, gave us a cup of tea and popped us into bed. And I couldn't sleep because of the adrenaline pumping and just the kind of the aftershock of going through that experience. And the day after, we went to a spa and had a lovely time and an afternoon tea, and everything is all good. We took some time to integrate and to write down because it was a huge thing to go through. And these are the lessons that I want to share with you because I think these are absolute gold for running a business as well. So listen to these. There's 9 lessons that I learned, and just let me know what comes up for you, whether these resonate with you. Okay, so lesson number 1 is it is good to test your boundaries and get comfortable with being uncomfortable. I don't want to be one of these people whose world gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and they have a very strict and rigid list of things that they like and don't like, and they don't deviate from that. So I do think it's important to test your boundaries and kind of check. Something is a absolute no for you. Can you try it a different way? Can you do it in a supportive way? Yeah, so I'm really, really proud that I tried that. Lesson number 2 is discernment. So it's about that sweet spot. It's about that recognition from when you when you are on high alert because you are telling yourself a story versus when it actually doesn't feel right. So I had to figure out whether it was my imagination running away with me, whether I've read too many Stephen King books or point horrors, whether I'd bought too much into the narrative that it was like the start of a horror movie. And when actually my system, my intuition was telling me, this does not feel right. Get yourself out of this situation. Too many women ignore their intuition and end up in tragic circumstances because of that. And for me, that environment, yeah, it was basic, but actually it felt oppressive and it felt grim. And I was cold, I was uncomfortable, and I did not feel safe. You can sit here and tell me, and my husband's well camped in bothies before, and I know plenty of people who've camped in bothies. But for me, I did not feel safe. And for me, being able to own that and say, nope, this isn't for me, is really, really important. Which brings me on to lesson number 3, which is you have got nothing to prove. Absolutely nothing to prove. And it was just my ego keeping me there. It was just my ego not wanting to come on here and say, we didn't do it. We bailed. We failed. This is the conclusion that I've reached, that bailing is not failing. It's an empowered no. And being able to own what is not right for you and opt out is huge. And there's so many people pleasers and people just going along with things to keep the peace. No, do what is right for you. Say no, be the outlier, do something different, feel left out, but do what is right for you. Lesson number 4 is pick your tribe wisely. Pick your traveling companion wisely. I trust Jane implicitly. I have done a lot of hiking, a lot of adventures with her, and she trusts me as well. I respect her and she me. There were a couple of times when I said, I don't think it's this way, and she's listened to me, and vice versa. And we made a pretty good team. We're a solid team. We trusted each other to get down off that mountain. Um, I had no doubt we'd get down that mountain safely. We just, I just knew that we would figure it out. Lesson number 5 is trust yourself to manage a crisis, and to make wise, prudent decisions and not panic. Out on those fells, in a storm, in the pitch black, it was like an out of body experience. That's the best way I can describe it. You know, the adrenaline was pumping. Um, Once we made that decision to go, it was just action stations. It was just hyper focus to get us down safely. And yet I didn't panic. I did not panic at any moment. I was able to choose the best course of action, and I was able to follow through. And that's huge. Just to be able to trust myself to make wise decisions and not panic, is so important, both to get us down safely and in my business as well. And then lesson number 6 is to take the time to integrate. So often we jump from thing to thing, crisis to crisis, project to project, without actually taking the time to stop, to process, to integrate, and to take the lessons learned. So I had these lessons learned written down a couple of hours after it all happened, because I knew for me it was a really big experience to go through that, and I wanted to make sure that I took the time to fully integrate and learn the lessons, um, because otherwise I don't want to have that sticky energy hanging around my body. Um, and yeah, I needed to ground it basically. And the happy news is that I was able to do that over a full English in a farm shop, which is always my preferred way of integrating. Lesson number 7 is allow yourself to be supported and mothered. And this is quite a personal one to me, because I have a narrative running of I need to be independent and I need to be self sufficient and I can't ask for help. So it was actually huge for me to ask Jane's parents for help, and seeing them, even though they were going on holiday the next day, welcome us with open arms and a cup of tea and pop us into bed and just look after us. That was absolutely huge, to accept and welcome that help. And then number 8 is to have the right tools for the job. Doing these things outside your comfort zone is so much easier if you trust your kit. You know, I had the torches, I had the waterproofs, I had the bag cover, all the stuff that I needed to do what I needed to do. And if you've ever tried to do a thing with the wrong tool, or do it manually, or make do, you will know how much harder the thing is. And then finally, number 9, lesson number 9 is to have a safety net always. It's always good to have a plan B. It's always good to have a safety net, so that if you are taking these risks, that you know that it's not kind of a desperate all or nothing thing. There is always room to pivot. There's always room to change your mind. There's always room to realize that you've made a mistake and choose differently. So this is my tale of failing. Bailing is not failing, and my 9 lessons from the bothy. Here's an invitation. If you enjoy my authentic approach to doing business, come and join me inside Audacity Limitless You Academy. So this is my brand new on-demand program of transformation for female entrepreneurs and business owners. It's all about authentic self-mastery. It's all about transformation, and it's all about reaching your next level of business by alchemizing your origin story paradigm. There is a pretty special beta price right now, only available for a short amount of time. There is a link in the notes if you would like to go and check that out. Thank you for being here. I hope you have enjoyed listening or watching this one, and I will see you very soon.